In today's video, we're going to take a look at a few of the Imperium factions, notably the Custodes and the Sisters of Battle, who both got a few changes and a few very welcome buffs, and also the Admech, who had a few absolutely huge adjustments actually that really do impact their playstyle and make a couple of their units at least much better than they were before. So the question in this video is, can these changes make the Admech finally, as we get towards the end of the edition, a good, solid, workable codex? We're going to start off with the Sisters of Battle, the Adeptus Sororitas. These lovely ladies got not only a good number of points drops, but also a really nice rules update to their Retributors, and that does actually make them quite scary now. So from the points perspective, Astrid Thurga dropped a hefty 15 points, making her now just 70 points instead of 85 as they were before, which is just a really nice way to get them into your lists and give those dev wounds to a unit that bit more easily now. Your Imagifiers also dropped 10 points, they've gone down to 65. Again, this is just a nice quality of life change to allow you to fit them into your list and get that bit of miracle dice reliability from the reroll a bit more cheaply. So they can both be great additions into lists now, and you will be able to fit them into your army with just a bit more ease. Another character that also got dropped in points is the mighty Celestine herself. The Living Saint has gone down to 150 points, down from 160. This also helps. She can actually be deceptively tanky in my experience with her regenerating Gemini Superior, not to mention her own 2-up save and 4-up invuln. So just making her that little bit cheaper is really nice. She is now essentially 150 points for 9 wounds that can have a chance to regenerate, and so it can make her and also a unit of Seraphim or Zephyrim that she's with really difficult to shift. And then last but not least on the unit front, the Retributors, they did actually go down in points as well, in addition to the aforementioned change that I said at the start of the video. They are now 105 points for 5, which is actually fairly solid, I think. Yes, they are only toughness 3 with 1 wound, but that is 105 points for 4 multi-melters. And then, as I mentioned, they have got even more attractive thanks to a rules update in the Dataslate. Their Storm of Retribution rule gets a massive buff. Previously, the rule gave you reroll hit and wound rolls of 1, but then it got bumped up to +1 to hit and +1 to wound if your Retributors were shooting at an enemy unit that had destroyed any of your units in the game up till that point. And now the way that it works is that they get that second buff in addition to keeping the rerolls. So previously they would go from the rerolls to the +1. Now they get both. So if your Retributors are shooting at a unit that's killed some of your sisters' units, they can now be potentially hitting on 3s even if they've moved, and rerolling 1s, and then wounding even toughness 11 knights on 4s, also re-rolling 1s. So this just makes their melters so much better than they were before. The old version, when they were just getting the +1 to hit and wound rolls, would do about 9 or so damage to something like a gladiator tank, whereas now that they get to keep the re-roll 1s in addition, that moves the average up to about 12. So this does actually push them up to a bracket where they can actually take out medium tanks in a single volley. So it's a really good bonus. It's a really nice change, and they are going to be incredibly good with that buff in addition to their small points drop. So these ladies, I think, will see the board a lot more now. The issues that Sisters have had for a while about having some poor anti-tank due to relying on melter so much, now to some extent at least seems to have been alleviated with this change. On the Custodes front, nothing actually changed rules-wise, but a few units did drop in cost, which is nice. Although, to be fair, with a small elite army like Custodes, getting a few small points drops really isn't going to make the biggest difference to your list most of the time. Essentially, what you got is that the Shield Captain dropped 10 points, going down to 120. Your Custodian Guard, they dropped 10 points for 4 or 15 points for 5, taking them to 160 points or 200 for 5 of them. So now, with those changes, if you were bringing those units, you can maybe fit in an extra enhancement or something into your army. It's not like you are going to be getting a whole extra model though for the most part. Elsewhere, the Land Raider, much like the Space Marines, that dropped 20. It's gone down to 220, which is very welcome and makes it a bit easier to fit in. And then 2 of the Sisters units, the Prosecutors and the Vigilators, they also got a points drop for the bigger size squads. So they still say the same price for 4 or 5 models in the unit, so the min unit sizes haven't changed in terms of points. But instead, if you took 9 or 10 of them, the Prosecutors drop 15 points down to 75 or 85 points respectively, whilst the Vigilators, they also drop 15 points down to 100 or 110, depending on whether you bring 9 or 10 models. I think realistically, whilst it is a nice drop points-wise, the use of Sisters is generally with their smaller min-size squads, so I would personally still rather be taking 4 or 5 of them, even if points per model you are not getting quite the same value as you would by taking the bigger squads. It's just not worth spending that extra 40 or 50 points for 10 of them when all you really want and all you really need is the 5 of them for doing what you want them to do on the battlefield. So I think overall the Sisters have come out rather well. Custodes, yes, they have technically had a buff, but I'm not sure how much it's actually going to change in practice. As I said, this could maybe get you an enhancement on a unit you didn't have, on a character you didn't have before, or maybe if you really were lucky and had taken a lot of these units, maybe one extra Custodian Guard or something in your list compared to what you had previously. So not a huge change, but certainly a buff nonetheless. The Admech, however, they have had some whoppingly big changes, and as I said, they may actually be, dare I say it, quite good for the last few months of 10th edition. Points-wise, they've only had 2 changes, and both of these were actually increases, so that might strike you as a bit odd considering I've just said they've been buffed, but wait and see. Belisarius' Call went up a whopping 40 points, all the way up to 175, which is a lot, but he has definitely got significantly better. And then your Iron Strider Ballastarii, they are up 5 points a model, so they are now 75 points each, all the way up to 225 points if you bring a unit of 3 of them. But what has changed with their rules to warrant these points increases? Well, first up, let's look at Belisarius, who has had some very, very funky changes. His main rule, Canticles of the Omnissiah, which allows you to select one of 3 abilities, like the Primarch style characters have, that is now done in your command phase rather than at the start of the battle round, and it now lasts until your next command phase. So that just gives you a bit more control about what buff you need and when you get it up, rather than having to choose it at the very start of the battle round. But then the 3 rules you can pick from have all been updated. So the biggest improvement in my opinion is Invocation of Machine Vengeance. This used to be an aura where units within 6 inches got to reroll hit rolls of 1. This now allows you to pick an enemy unit, and that is your vengeance target, and all of your Admech units get to reroll hit rolls against it. So Admech essentially have Oath of Moment now. This is incredibly good and straight off the bat improves a lot of your damage potential into those key important Death Star style units. So that alone is a huge buff, and I think it's going to be one that you will pick almost all the time. The other 2 options have also changed, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure they're going to be good enough to be better than Invocation of Machine Vengeance. Mantra of Discipline went from giving out +1 to Battle Shock or Leadership tests for a unit within 6 inches of Belisarius to now also giving +1 OC in that same aura, which isn't bad, but it's not amazing. +1 OC and +1 Leadership, it's an okay buff, but it's really not going to be worth it most of the time, I don't think, compared to full rerolls to hit against an important enemy target. And then the final ability, Shroud Psalm, this got changed from giving the benefits of cover to a unit within 6 inches, or to all units, should I say, within 6 inches, to instead now giving those units stealth. This is significantly better. Giving -1 to be hit instead of just +1 to your save because of cover is really strong, notably because it is so easy to get cover anyway. It's a really nice buff that you can stack quite trivially now, so you can quite reliably get at least a few units with -1 to be hit from stealth and also still getting that +1 save from cover. So it is definitely a flat buff 99% of the time, and it may be worth taking over the Oath ability if you really need to stay alive for a turn or something. It's definitely got stiff competition from the Oath of Moment style ability, but this definitely will help a chunk of your army stay alive against some heavy shooting if you are expecting a load of enemy shooting to be coming into you in that particular battle round. But that's not all that Cole got. He also got a nice buff to his solar atomizer. This is now 3 shots instead of D3. It has lost blast though, which is a shame, but generally into things that you want to be shooting this thing into, flat 3 shots I think is better than D3 with blast. It is also now D6 damage instead of a flat 3, and it is melter 3 instead of melter D3, which is generally, I think, a good bit better. Into those single targets like tanks and vehicles, you will now be getting that reliable 3 shots, and then when you are within 9 inches, you are looking at D6 plus 3 damage rather than 3 plus D3. So it is really quite a nice improvement there, and it definitely makes Call even more of a must-take than he was before. The Onager Dooncrawler also got a nice buff to its Eradication Beamer. This has now got sustained hits 1 instead of D3, but to make up for that, it is now 3D3 shots instead of 2D3 for each profile, and then as just a nice extra cherry on top, the focused version of the shot is strength 10 instead of strength 9. So this makes it generally more reliable in terms of the number of shots you get, and it also makes it just that little bit better in the focus profile against those light and medium tanks and vehicles and monsters, because you will be likely wounding them on 3s or 4s now rather than 4s or 5s. Next up we have the Ballistarii. To balance out their 5-point increase per model, their guns gained twin linked, so the autocannon and the lascannon options, they are now both re-rolling wound rolls, which is incredibly good. You are either getting 4 shots at strength 9 and 3 damage, or 2 shots at strength 12 and d6 plus 1 damage, so they really are going to do much more of a dent into those tough targets now, because you can re-roll those wound rolls. And then finally, some of the Sikaran units also got a few small buffs. The Infiltrators get improved melee weapons, their power weapon goes to 4 attacks instead of just 3, and then their Taser Goad gains a pip of AP going to -1, which still isn't amazing to be fair, but it is definitely a lot better than it was before with strength 6, no AP and 1 damage. Going to 1 AP does at least help you cut through some armor now. On the Ruststalker front, the Transonic Razor and Cord Claw actually dropped an attack, going down to just 3, but it gained damage 2, so that makes it actually much better into marine profiles. The new stat line does about double the output actually. It actually kills a marine on average rather than just doing 1 damage, so that change there, although there is a bit of a nerf to it, is overall much better into those specific 2 wound stat lines. I think overall the Admech have done really quite well out of this datasheet. They look to be in a much stronger position than they were even just a few weeks ago. Is it enough to give them some relevance as we go towards the end of 10th edition? Who knows, we will have to wait and find out and see where the meta settles, but certainly I think Call is going to be an absolute must-take even more than he was before, and the Iron Strider Ballistarii now look to be a genuine threat to a lot of armor and monsters. A unit of 3 for just 225 points can now look to do about 15 damage to an Imperial Knight if you put Invocation of Machine Vengeance on it, so that is a pretty scary amount of output that they can now be throwing down the board. And that is going to be it for this video. As always, I'd love to know your thoughts on these. Has these changes made the Admech great? And also, what do you think of the changes for both the Sisters of Battle and the Custodes? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.